Hello and welcome to 4/5's Design. My name's Jay. Just to welcome you to this channel, if you've not come across it before, I work with yarn, paint, wood, glass, doing home decor, furniture restoration and decoration, anything really that I find creative. More importantly than that, I'm hoping this channel will inspire you to get up and do something you've not done before. If, like me, you happen to be well over 50, well overweight, not well confident, if I can do it, so can you. So be brave. This tutorial today is the second in a series of 5 tutorials to tell you how to crochet a realistic looking rose. Today I'm going to concentrate on how to make the petals, and what I'll do is to start with a very basic petal that anyone can do with minimal crocheting experience. You'll get a petal that looks like that. And from that you can go on to make a crocheted rose that will look something like that. With a few additions, you can change that basic petal by adding wire to the outer rim or a wiggly shape to get a different look, and that will give you a rose that looks something like that. Quite an old-fashioned cottage style rose, I would say. Again, with a very simple addition, using the wire around the outside and using a more sculptured picot pointy edge, you can make a sculptured rose that looks like this. And you'll notice with this one I've added some fake raindrops, so I'll be showing you how to do those as well. Once you've mastered those, again with very simple techniques, you can produce a petal like this that's got a very wiggly edge, but also if I turn it to the side you can see it is shaped even more like a realistic rose leaf, rose petal even. And that is honestly very simple to do. That will give you a rose that'll look something like this when it's all assembled. In addition to that, I'll show you how to go from a rose bud, very easy to make as well, to a rose that's beginning to open a little bit more, to one that's fully open, and to one that's slightly bigger and almost to the stage where it's past its useful life. I'm not making any references to me at this point. So I hope you'll enjoy these, and let's get cracking with how to make those basic petals. To make the petals, you start with a magic ring, and I'm going to do this fairly quickly. If you've not done a magic ring before, then check out my other tutorial on how to crochet a realistic rose, the basics, and I show you then a little bit slower than I'm doing now how to do a magic ring. But I'm starting with a magic ring of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 stitches, and I complete that magic ring holding that top section, taking the bottom of those 2 loops, pulling it together, then taking that top tail of yarn and pulling it together, so we've closed that loop. You finish that off with a slip stitch into not the first loop that you did, but the first stitch. I think that's it. So I'm going to do the second row now, and that involves doing that double crochet increase in every second stitch. So a double crochet as normal, and then a double crochet increase into the following stitch, double crochet increase into the following stitch, double crochet increase to the following stitch, double crochet increase to the following stitch, and I think we just need to do that one more time. Double crochet increase, and we should now have 18 stitches. Let's just check. 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18 stitches. So you need to continue to do this all the way around, so that each time you do a circle, you add 6 more stitches. So we started with 6, we had 12, and we've just done 18. Miss 2, double crochet, miss 2, double crochet all the way around. All you need to remember to do is that for that little sequence of double crochet, double crochet, double crochet increase, you need to do that 6 times to get you around that loop or around that circle. I find that I can't concentrate for that length of time. I get interrupted, I lose track of where I am. So the method that I use, it's 2 things. The first one, that's easier at this stage where you haven't really got a defined shape as yet, is I use my 6 times table. So the first round was 6 stitches, then 12, then 18. So with 18 stitches round there, we did that double crochet increase on every 3rd stitch. I'm not going to do that double crochet increase on every 4th stitch until we've got 6 4s and 24, until we've got 24 stitches around the outside. I realise that might sound a bit complicated, but it's easier if I just show you. So we do 1, 2, 3, and then the 4th one is the double crochet increase stitch. So we carry on 5, 6, 7, and the 8th one is the double crochet increase. Can you see we're going in multiples of 4? So that's 8 stitches, 9, 10, 11, and then the 12th one is the double crochet increase. 13, whoops, a daisy, 13, 14, 15, and then the 16th stitch is the double crochet increase. 17, 18, 19, and the 20th one is the double crochet increase. And then we finish off finally, because 6 4s are 24, is 21, 22, 23, and then the 24th one is that double crochet increase again. Now I think you can begin to see now how that shape is beginning to develop. You've got that 6-sided shape, so the double crochet is what makes that angle rather than having it as a complete circle, and that's what you want to get the shape and also to keep your petal nice and flat. So I'll just show you the next round because I think then you'll get the idea that I'm trying to say, and that for this one we did that double crochet increase in every 4th stitch. This time we're going to do it in every 5th stitch until we've got 60 stitches on. So we're working in multiples of 6, we're increasing 6 stitches each circle. We did that on the 4th one last time, we're going to do it on the 5th one this time. So 5 6s are 30. I hope you're with me still. So here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then that 5th stitch is the double crochet increase where we go into that same stitch. And along the next section, that's 6, 7, 8, 9, on the 10th stitch is your double crochet increase. I'll just do one more to show you. So 11, 12, 13, 14, and then which stitch is your double crochet? Yes, it's the next one, 15. So I'd do that 3 more times to continue around the outside, so we then have 30 stitches going all the way around. Another way, if again you lose your concentration like I do, once you start to build up your pattern, you can tell where you need to do that double crochet increase without needing to count. It's more accurate if you do count, but in case you lose where you are, then if you just have a look at what we do here, I just might zoom you in just a little bit. So we've just done our first of those 5 stitches, so that's 1, 2, 3, and can you see how we are approaching that turning point there? So the next one is the one where we're going to do the 4th and the 5th stitch, and we've sort of turned that corner then. So we'd go 1, 2, 3, and then just on that corner where we've done the double crochet increase in the previous row is where you do that double crochet again, ready to turn the corner. It's entirely up to you which way you do this. If you want to do the original method, which is to skip first 1 stitch per round and then 2 stitches per round and so on until you've got the size of the petal that you want, that's entirely up to you. If you want to do the method where you go in multiples of 6, then you might find that's easier and you can keep track of where you are. Alternatively, you can look at the shape and judge where your double crochet increase needs to be on each turn and do it that way. Either way, you'll need to work out what size of petal you want for your project, and what I do for that is I normally have made myself in advance just some little templates. And these, as you can see, aren't terribly sophisticated, but for the rows that I like to do most, I'll just show you. For this type of rose that's sort of semi-open, not fully open and not a bud, then this is the pattern that I use. You need 2 of the inner petals, then 3 for the row outside that that's slightly bigger, 3 for the next row of petals, and 4 for the final row. Now you can either continue to crochet till the petals are the size you want using your template, or what I do also is to work out, when I've got them to the size I want, how many stitches there are along each of those top edges. So for this little tiny size here, there are just 11 stitches along that top side there. For the next size up, there are 13. For the next size up, there are 15. And for the final outer level, that 6 is 16 stitches. So continue to do your petals to the size that you want, using a template or using the number of stitches, however you want, until you've got all the petals that you need. Once you've finished your petal, you can either leave it exactly as it is and use that then to construct your rows, or you can do some embellishments to this basic petal using one of several different techniques. The first I'm going to show you is to add a picot to the corners. So using my double crochet stitch, when you get to that stitch that turns the corner, all I'm going to do is to chain, go back into that double crochet stitch, grab my yarn, pull it through, and then go back into that same stitch again to complete that, so that I've then got a picot stitch on the edge of that petal. So can you see that, how a little pointy bit there? Just to zoom in so that you can see. Very delicate and subtle, but it does look lovely if you do one of those on each corner. I'll just do one more on the edge of this petal. So coming to the end now, you can see which stitch it is that you do that picot in, because it's the one right on the corner. And this time I'm going to do a half treble stitch. I've just gone too far there. This time I'm going to do a half treble stitch and do a picot in that. So do your half treble stitch as you would normally do, one chain, and then do the picot technique into that half treble stitch, and go back into that same stitch with another half treble, and you can see you've got the same technique but just a very slightly bigger little picot. So you can do that with your double crochet, your half treble, your treble, or you can even build up to that corner by doing double crochet, half treble, and then doing a treble crochet picot in the corner. So what I'm trying to do here is show you different techniques, and then you can use those to make your own style. So that's the picot. Now, just before I go around the corner, just something to say that when you're constructing your rows, the bottom half of the rows you probably won't see. So if you're doing any embellishments, there's probably no need to do it all the way around this bottom section. So if you're adding picots here, I would just add 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 picots and not do that bottom one. If I'm doing the embellishment I'm just going to show you, I would probably just do it for this top section, because you won't see that bottom part of it, so it'll just save you a bit of time and energy and yarn. So another simple way to add an embellishment is to just simply vary the stitches that you use. So you can start with a double crochet, move on to a half treble, and then do a treble. You might then want to go back down and do a half treble and back down to a double crochet. And all you're doing here is just stopping that edge being so square. You're just adding a little bit of definition, and dependent on how much of this embellishment you do, you can end up with quite a sort of wiggly pattern around the edge. It's best if you do this randomly rather than following a set pattern, and that's something I tend to struggle with. I have difficulty doing random things. I like it sort of fairly structured and neat. So all that's done is to very subtly change that from a very straight line to something that's a little bit different. If you want it really wiggly, then you can combine those two effects. So you would have, for example, you could do a treble crochet, a half treble, and then decide mid-row to go totally wild and add a picot. And then I'm going to do a half treble, back down to a double. So again, it's just totally random, just smoothing off those edges, but you don't need to stick to the edges, those pointy bits, to do your picot. You can do them anywhere along, and a combination of those picots, double crochets, single crochet. If I can show you this one that I did on this green petal, that's adding various different techniques randomly around the edge of the petal. It just gives you something that's quite old-fashioned rose, sort of wiggly edge. Now you'll notice with that petal that I've added the wire, so that's another thing that you can do. I'm just going to undo this row here now and show you that next step. That's actually quite simple to do, but I think particularly when you're doing a larger rose, it's quite useful to have a wire included in that outer rim. So all you need to do for this is to take a piece of wire, and I found that the thinnest wire is the best. That petal that I was showing you before, the wire that I used to use was quite thick, quite strong wire. There is no need for that. This wire that I use now, you can see I just got this from Amazon, is 0.3 millimeters. It's very, very fine. And that is all you need, because you're just looking for something similar to some wired ribbon that you use at Christmas time particularly. And all you need to do for this, again a very simple technique, but it does help to add definition, is get your wire and pass it through that loop of your yarn, and then tighten your loop, so that you've now got your piece of wire trapped by that yarn. Hopefully you could see that. Just going to do that again. So I'm going to take my piece of wire and just thread it as you would cotton through a needle. You thread that piece of wire through the loop of your yarn and then pull it tight. And then all you do now is to continue crocheting with your double crochets like you would normally, but including that wire, so that you're capturing that wire. Every time you bring your loop under, you're capturing that wire at the top. So can you see? I'll just do that again. You go through your stitch, grab your yarn, and I'm pulling that through, and that's where the wire is. So to complete it, I just grab my yarn again and pull that through, and that wire then is being trapped by that row of stitches. So again, you don't need any particular techniques in terms of stitches to do that, but adding that wire really does help you to shape the rows. Another technique, I'm going to take this wire out for now. Because I just want to show you another simple technique that is also very effective and doesn't involve anything other than the stitches you've been doing. And that is to change the colour of your yarn on this last row. So in order to do that, I'm going to first of all, well, I suggest you do it actually at the corner, at that turning point. So I'll just scoot along to here first. Okay, so I'm first of all going to snip my yarn because I won't need that anymore. So that's my old yarn, and I've now got this new colour that I want to add. So I'm taking that new colour. Hold your old yarn out of the way for now. Take your new colour. Get that ready to use by holding it in place like along with the old cotton, the old yarn, and then start your double crochet stitch as usual. This time grab the new yarn and continue to pull that through as if you were just carrying on crocheting as normal. So let's just show you that again. So there's your old yarn. Hold that out of the way for now. Get your new piece of yarn. Get that ready to crochet as you would normally do, but hold that in position as with the old piece of yarn. And then start your double crochet as normal in the next stitch along. Grab your new yarn, pull that through, and continue to stitch with that new colour. And it's as easy as that. But by changing colour, of course there's as many possibilities as there are colours. You can totally change the look of your petal just by doing that simple technique. And I've used that quite a bit on the rose petals that I've done. I'll just show you one now. But as you can see, that colour's changed. It's nice and neat. And I'll show you where And that rose that I've shown you before. Some of these I've done a green leaf with a pink edge, and I'm just working on ones where I'm doing a green leaf with a cream edge. But that just produces that lovely effect, and it's simple and easy to do. Now once you know that by adding a different colour yarn there are loads of possibilities, something else that I'm just trying at the moment is to add an additional yarn into that final layer. So I'm not going to change my yarn, but I'm going to add to it. And what I'm trying at the moment, I'm just experimenting with this. My husband does fly fishing and fly tying, and this particular yarn I saw at the fly tying shop when you went. It seems to be called Ice Dub or Micro Chenille, and if you can see, it's got a sort of inbuilt shimmer to it. Can you see? I don't know if you can see that there in the sunlight, the lovely little shimmer. I just think it's gorgeous. I'm not entirely sure what I'm going to be doing with it yet, but if you want to, you can add that to that final layer. So on this occasion, I've got two pieces of yarn. I've got the original one, and in the same way that you add you swap your yarns, you can just add another yarn to it. So as I've done before, I've got my new yarn, I've got the hold of that as well as the existing one, and this time I'm going to get both of those yarns through. I'm still doing that simple double crochet stitch, but I'm now adding that additional element. That's Lily Dog wanting to join us for the party. It just gives a slightly different look. I'm quite excited to think what I could do with this. It does come in a range of different colours, this chenille. I'll see if you can tell the difference. Just up close. Probably just about see it's got a little shimmer to it. I'll show you a couple of petals I've already done with that chenille. These are not necessarily rose petals, I was just playing about with these. So this is where I've just done that technique of adding that chenille to the final row, and this one I've done around a wire because I'm thinking of doing a little tiny flower made from these little circular petals. It probably isn't showing up other than it looking a little bit fuzzy, but it has got like a little glint in there as though you're adding tinsel to it. It's really subtle, but it's gorgeous. But the world is your oyster. You can do whatever you wish, add different colour yarn, different types of yarn, different types of effect. I wonder if you could put tinsel around there for some sort of really funky Christmassy petals. I'm sure you could. I'm going to show a technique now to improve the shape of the petals around the outside of your rose to make it even more authentic and realistic. When I first started crocheting roses, when I came to look at them, the rose itself was in a sort of V shape like that. When I looked in nature, I mean this is a fake rose, but it illustrates the point well. The actual shape of the rose was more like a little cup at the bottom, like a U shape at the bottom, rather than being triangular. As you can see, it's sort of quite bulbous at the bottom and then tapers at the top. And my rose petals and my roses weren't like that. I've had a good look on YouTube and found patterns for petals that gave you that lovely shape, an authentic petal shape, what seemed to me quite complicated. So I've found a way, I've worked out a way to do it using the petals that we've normally done up to now with the 6 sides in that hexagonal, six-sided shape, but with an added embellishment that is very easy to do, but then leaves you with petals shaped like this. Can you see it's got like a little cup at the bottom? You can still bend that petal over to the shape that you want. This one's got no embellishments on it at all, but you could still do this with a petal that's got wire around the edge. You can still do it with a petal that's got the picots at the points of the petal, or if you decided to do a wavy edge, it would still work. The only thing I would suggest if you do the wavy edge is that you just do it at the top part of your petal, because the bottom part is where you're going to crochet that embellishment to give you that little cup. So we're going to do the embellishment on this section of the petal, so half of it. We're going to start in the middle of one of those straight sides there, then crochet around the edge until we get to the similar point on the other side. So from where one fingernail is to the other fingernail, if you can see that. So again, as I tend to be, I'm not terribly precise with this. It doesn't need to be exact, but I'm going to start about just not exactly halfway, just under halfway down that edge. I'm going to pick up a stitch and cast on, grabbing my yarn through, she says, hopefully. Just get myself organised. I'm grabbing my yarn through and just doing a slip stitch to anchor that yarn in place. So now we're up and running. So there, it's just a little bit less than half the way on one of those straight sides, and all I'm going to do, I'm just going to zoom in a little bit so you can see the state of my terrible nail polishing, is a double crochet in that first stitch, not that stitch but skip that stitch and do a double crochet in the next stitch and repeat that. So a double crochet and then skip a stitch and do a double crochet in the next stitch, pulling that together. So we do the same again, a double crochet, skip a stitch and do a double crochet in that next but one, same again, double crochet, skip a stitch. As I'm doing this, I can see that I'm beginning to get that little bend because I'm pulling the yarn, pulling the petal on the edge together by skipping that stitch. So one double crochet, not that stitch, go into the next one, pull it tight, one double crochet, skip that stitch and go into the next one. And you can see it's already beginning to get that little bulge. So we started there, we've worked our way around. We want to end up then about, again, less than half down that edge. So I think it probably will just do one more of that pattern of one double crochet, skip a stitch and another double crochet. And that should be enough for the first row. Now you could leave it as it is. That's still giving you that little bit of a nice rose shape, just with that one. And how easy was that? You may wish to use that for the inner petals, but I'll just show you to get a greater bend in the petal. I'm just going to turn that work around, so I'm now working on the reverse side. I'm going to do a slip stitch in that first stitch along, so I haven't got so much of a bump there, and then off we go again. Double crochet, miss a stitch, another double crochet, double crochet, oops. It's hard to get back when you're crocheting through the camera on your phone. I'll just have to move that just for a second. Get back to where I was. So double crochet, oops, skip a stitch, another double crochet. I've lost my rhythm now, haven't I? Double crochet, skip a stitch, another double crochet, double crochet, slip and miss a stitch, go to the next one. Oops. And we're coming to the end now, so I'm going to do another double crochet, and then in that very last stitch just a slip stitch to finish off. Oh. Excuse me while I go back behind my phone and check that out. I can see better there. I'm just going to do this last bit actually looking at my crocheting properly rather than through my phone. So I'm going to do it. One last double crochet there, and in that last stitch a slip stitch to finish. Cut my yarn and we're ready to go. Obviously you've just finished that off properly now, but you've got a real defined shape there to that petal. And how easy was that? The final technique I'm going to mention is the one I used most on the rose that is covered in this tutorial, and that's shaping the top part of the petal using half treble and treble crochet increase stitches. So if you get your petal so that you've got a pointy bit at the top and the bottom, as I've done here, you can see that that particular embellishment I've just done over the top half of the rose. The bottom section I'm leaving for that shaping technique that we've just covered. So all I've done for that petal is halfway up the right hand side I've started doing half treble increase stitches. So that's a half treble, 2 of those in each stitch, swapping over to a treble crochet increase, and then doing the same in reverse down the other side, getting ready to shape at the bottom. A slip stitch just to get a point of demarcation between the end of that section and the beginning of this next element. I'm going to start by doing a double crochet, and I'm going to skip a stitch and do a double crochet in the next stitch. Double crochet, slip a stitch and do a double crochet in the next stitch along. Double crochet, miss a stitch and do a double crochet in the stitch next along, and continue to do that all the way along. Single crochet, double crochet, miss a stitch, double crochet in the next one, double crochet, miss a stitch and do a double crochet in the next one, double crochet, miss a stitch, double crochet in the next one along, double crochet, miss a stitch, double crochet in the next one along. I'm just going to zoom in for this last bit just to make sure you can see what I'm doing. So a double crochet, miss a stitch, then double crochet. So although the shape that this is going to give you is tremendous, it's still only using those basic techniques that I covered in my first tutorial. Double crochet, miss a stitch, go into the next stitch along, double crochet, miss a stitch, and do a double crochet in the next stitch along. Double crochet, miss a stitch, and do a double crochet in the next stitch along, and then finish off with a slip stitch there and cast off. And as I think you can see, I'll just zoom back out again for this section, that just by doing that simple little technique, it's changed the shape of that petal incredibly. So you've got that lovely natural petal shape with that bulbous bit at the bottom, just done by skipping a double crochet, and that top bit all wiggly just by doing those basic stitches but doing them synchronous in each of those stitches. I think that's rather marvellous. Just wanted to talk to you a little bit now about colouring the petals of your rose. It does seem a bit odd, particularly when you're using such a wonderful, already hand-dyed product like this. I mean, this is that wonderful mulberry silk, already hand-dyed, beautiful, subtle colours within there, and it is just perfect as it is. However, when I was making the roses, I wanted to try and blend a couple of the colours of yarn together, and in order to make that even more natural and realistic looking, I wanted to find a way of using some sort of colour on the yarn that was going to enhance it without actually ruining it. And I've tried 3 methods so far that I'm going to share with you now. The first one that I did, can you see all these colours here? This is that powder or dust that confectionery cake makers use when they're wanting to add colour to icing or frosting on cakes. They come, as you can see, this is only a small sample of the colours that are available, but you can see all the fantastic range of colours that you can get. And the good thing about this, the thing that I like as well, is that some of them have got like a little twinkle in it. This is silver sparkle. So when you're using this to colour or shade your yarn, you've got that option of adding a slight little bit of glitter to it. Alternatively, there is something that I've started experimenting with now, is using watercolour, and particularly watercolour pens. I mean, these again come in a whole range of different colours that you can see here. Lots of different brands available. I'm not particularly pushing this brand for any reason other than I just happen to have it. And something that, where's that little brush? Something that when you get a set like this, it comes with is one of these blending brushes. So you add water to this section of it and then use it as you would with watercolours. If you're out somewhere watercolouring, you need some water to blend your watercolour paint together. You use this little brush. It's fantastic. And something that I've recently discovered that I just think is wonderful and amazing is this product here from a company called Viva, and they're watercolour sheets. So this is a tiny little pad. You see how big it is compared to my hand, and in there are 16 watercolours. I'll show you there. Look at those colours there. Each one of those is a really highly pigmented, saturated colour. And they've got wonderful colours within there. Look at that one, Persian blue, can you see it? And what's magical, when you use your little watercolour pen that you can use, you can buy one of these at the same time as you buy your watercolour sheet, but the watercolour pens come with one of those included, so I haven't needed to buy an additional one. But the colour is so strong and vibrant, and it comes with a little mixing pad at the back, so you can take that with you if you are into watercolours and art. You can take that with you just in your handbag or your pocket with your little watercolour pen, and you can sketch and paint away. I'm just going to show you now what the effect is of these three different techniques on these petals. So I'm hoping you can see those still now while I move into position. I'm going to do the powders first of all, and I shall use a paintbrush, and I'm just going to pour a little bit of the pink powder onto a piece of kitchen roll, or whatever paper you care to use. And because there's such a fantastic array of colours, this one's just a pink. This one here that I'm going to add to it is shimmer pink. Can you see that shimmer pink? I'm just going to blend those two together. Because that's the advantage of having that, using this powder, you can get that shimmer and then just very gently, very subtly shade these petals. I'm just going to do one petal for each of these techniques so you can see the difference. Thing to remember about this powder is once it's on, it ain't going anywhere. So you're best starting subtly and then build up the colour as you wish. As I've said, you may find that for you, the yarn that you use is just so wonderful anyway that there's no need to paint it or change the colour in any way, and that's perfectly fine. But I just wanted for some of the roses just to be able to blend it to give just that little subtle colour. I'm only going to do that little bit there, and it is just subtle, but can you see it's just shaded it just a little bit. I'm going to add a little bit more of that shimmer, and you can perhaps see what I need. The effect that I'm going for, here's a couple of roses that I've done. Can you see this one here? With this rose, I'd used green yarn and edged it in pink. And this one here is pink yarn that I've edged and then coloured. So, as you can see, it's just very subtle, but I've just blended those two, where the two yarns meet. I've just used, in this occasion, it was the watercolour pens, to just blend those two colours together so you haven't got that harsh line. And this one here, this rose, it was pale cream silk, and I like the effect of just adding, this was done using the watercolour sheets. I just added a little bit of colour on the edges of those cream petals just to give it a particular look. So that's what I'm going for. It is something that's quite subtle, but this is where the fun begins, because you can just experiment and decide to do this whichever way you can. I tend to do, once I've done the front of the petal, I will do the back, because obviously when you're assembling your rose, you will end up seeing the back of the petal. So I tend to do a bit of the back as well. And I'm just going to show you something here. This is the thing I found just to watch out for. As I mentioned, once it's on, it's not going anywhere. If you put too much on, what you can do then is just get or what will happen is you get quite a powdery finish. Obviously it is a powder you're putting on, and once it's on, you can't really get it off. So just beware, if you're going to add some colour, just be very subtle and build up your colour gradually. That one you probably can hardly notice at all, but when your rose is assembled, you'll see the subtle difference. So that's the powders. With the watercolour pens, I'll use this one for the watercolour pens. You can see that there. These again are very easy to use. That's what I like about this. And as with the powder, the thing to remember is to just do it very subtly. You can always add more colour after if you wish. This is where it does seem a travesty, because it looks as though you're using felt pens on some beautiful silk. These are watercolour pens, and they're a lovely product in itself. But can you see, just very quickly, just with a few small touches, you can just get a really subtle but a little bit more realistic look. If you want to use a couple of colours, that's easy enough. Just blend the two together. And particularly remember to go on the edge, because that you will definitely see the edge and the reverse side. And you may want to, although you play around with this yourself, you may want to use your watercolour brush to help blend those two colours together. If you do that, of course, you just need to wait for it to dry to get the full effect. That is probably a more vibrant, direct colour, applying these watercolour pens. The third one then is the watercolour sheets, and these I just think are so exciting. I'm just going to look at that one there. This top one here that looks green is actually magenta, and it's really is vibrant, as you can see here. If I just take a little bit of that colour onto the blending sheet, just look how vibrant that is. I think this is a fantastic product. I wish I was a good artist, because I would definitely be using this to do some fantastic watercolours, if only I could paint. So I'm just going to use it in this instance to embellish this rose. And what I've found is probably the best approach to this, because those colours are so vibrant, is to use it properly like a watercolour. So I'm going to use water from the little watercolour pen first to dampen the area I want to apply the watercolour paint to, and then I'm just going to apply a small amount of the colour to the outer edge. And I think you can see the difference between these three techniques already. This is by far the most vibrant of colours. So if that's what you're looking for in your rose, then this is the method for you. The powder, you can achieve more subtle effects. The watercolour pens are convenient and easy to use, but perhaps a little bit more vibrant in colour. And then these watercolour sheets, wow, just give you a really vibrant colour. I'm just going to line these up to see if you can see the difference, and I'll move in closely so you can see the difference between the three effects. If I can move closely here for you. Apologies for my dodgy camera work. So you can see the difference. That first one's, that's the powder, very subtle shades there, and you get that shimmer effect. Apply it with a paintbrush as you saw me do it. That one is the watercolour pens. Again, it's not too vibrant but still gives you instant colour. And then the last one, the watercolour sheets, if you're going for bright, vibrant colours to give your yarn that bit of an edge, then that's the method for you. As I mentioned before, you don't have to colour your yarn at all, particularly if you're using 100% silk yarn. They come in so many gorgeous colours. It almost seems a travesty to colour them in addition to how they arrive already. However, if you're wanting to get that blended approach, I'll just show you closely on here, if I can find my camera. If you want to get that blended approach, this is very close up, so it might look a bit strange. Where I can see on these green petals, I've just added a very, very subtle, slightly darker green edge to it. And where those two yarns that I've used join, I've used a little bit of pale pink there just to blend those two colours together. So I hope you found that useful. That's another technique for you to think about employing when you're trying to get that realistic looking rose. You continue to make your petals until you've got the number of different sizes that you need to construct and assemble your rose. So here, according to the template that I've done, I've got the 2 little ones for the centre. I've got 3 for the next ring around that. Neither of these are wired. I've then got 3 the next size up, and they are wired. And finally 4 for the outer edge, and that's also wired. So they are now ready for assembly.